Hi, I'm Dr. Steve Rissman. I'm here today to talk about integrative approaches to COVID-19. This is mostly for students in my pathophysiology class, as well as some of my other classes here at MSU Denver. However, I felt like it was important to make this approachable for a lot of people because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I am concerned about you. I'm concerned about my family and my friends and people who are near and dear to me. And I felt like it was not ethical for me to sit back, to read a bunch of studies, to look at what might be useful for COVID, given that there are very few approaches that are working and the high severity and mortality risk with this infection. I felt like the right thing to do would be to make this in such a way that it could be disseminated to a wide variety of folks. So I hope that you find this useful. So, as I said, there aren't any clinical trials in humans on COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus. We are using information that extrapolated from previous studies on various viruses, including the SARS-CoV virus, which is a close relative to the current COVID virus. And perhaps we'll be able to, in extrapolating or interpolating, this may be useful. We may find some benefit. But again, there are no clinical trials, and therefore a lot of this information has not been substantiated. My point here isn't, I have no ties to any products or any particular herbs that are herbal formulas. And so I'm not trying to promote any particular products. However, I think it's responsible for me to mention that there are, some of these potential uses for decreasing the risk of severe infection. A lot of this information comes from studies that I have researched. However, I was really inspired by the new article that's coming out, yet to be published, I believe, from Dr. Lise Altschuler, who is a colleague of mine, as well as Dr. Andrew Weil and a number of other medical scientists who are looking at this serious condition. And so I'm using information from them, and as well as a number of other studies that I have researched. Okay, so let's start with basic naturopathy. You gotta take care of the body. The best way to do that is by resting and sleeping, naps if you need it. But, there is information that shows that insufficient sleep increases something called CXCL9, a promoter of inflammation that we are seeing increases of in COVID-19. And so, it's underestimated, and it is really difficult to sleep. I know that I have woken up thinking, active, etc. Life is really abnormal for a lot of us, and that throws us out of our natural rhythms, our circadian rhythms, and therefore sleep is challenging. But the best you can do, try to get some sleep. One of the triggers, or one trigger for sleep is melatonin. By changing the light, decreasing the light that comes into our eyes, melatonin is secreted. It is secreted during sleep. So if you are not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough melatonin. Likewise, we might want to increase our melatonin prior to going to bed, to increase our melatonin. And I'll be talking about melatonin here in a little bit. But melatonin helps increase our sleep, and sleep helps increase our melatonin. both of which have been shown to decrease inflammation in this COVID-19. So try for at least 7 hours nightly. Wouldn't hurt to take a nap in the day if you can. All right, more about that in just a little bit. All right, diet, basic naturopathy. We all think we know a lot about diet, but given that there are given the level of inflammation that comes with COVID, we all could benefit by an anti-inflammatory diet. Specifically, that means increasing our fruits and vegetables, increasing our plant-based foods, decreasing our meats, our sugars, our highly processed carbohydrates. Though I understand, and I have a sweet tooth myself, I've been baking more, and perhaps you'll get a chance to, I'll talk more about that. But I think we have to be conscious of that in trying to figure out a way to decrease some of that and increase our plant-based diets because they are anti-inflammatory. So let's look at some of those things, specifically the flavonoids. The flavonoids tend to be antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. And what we're talking about is the pigments in the foods. So those bright dark blues and the bright oranges and all the colors that you see in a fresh salad or fresh vegetables and fruits are the flavonoids, and those can be really helpful. So I'll talk a little bit about those. Let's get into it a little bit more. Specifically, when I talk about the flavonoids, there were some that have been shown to have antiviral effects or decrease inflammation. One of those is epigallocatechin, ECGC, which is found in green tea. It's found in a number of fruits and vegetables. And you can look that all up, and there's a lot of information, so I can't go through all of it. But green tea is one place one food that is high in epigallocatechin. It is antiviral and has been shown to be effective, or thought to be effective in early infection. So therefore, the time is now, especially if you're asymptomatic, if you haven't been exposed, increase your green tea. I've chosen to increase my green tea in the afternoon. I still have to have my coffee in the morning. Love to have my coffee in the morning. Would love to have some in the afternoon, but I've switched to green tea because I realize the strong antioxidant effects, the strong antiviral effects, and the immune boosting effects. I also know, and this is not just a recent change I've made, there's strong anti-cancer benefits for green tea. So start to incorporate. I know some people don't care for the flavor of it, but I imagine you wouldn't care for the flavor of a viral infection that's potentially deadly either, or cancer. So figure it out. You can add honey. You can hold your nose and drink it. Drink it cold. I don't recommend the canned bottled versions because most of those are highly sweetened with sugar, and I don't think that those are I'm a little bit more leery of those preparations, but I suppose they're better than soda. Okay, move on. Curcumin. So we've heard the last few years, everybody knows that curcumin from turmeric is anti-inflammatory. It's anti-inflammatory, it's hepatoprotective, protective to the liver, anti-inflammatory to the cardiac tissue. And since we know that the COVID virus does target the cardiovascular system, it may be wise to start including that in one's diet. It shows a decrease in IL-1. IL-1 is your cytokine that increases, that triggers the hypothalamus to cause a fever. And so IL-1 equals fever is one of the things that I teach my pathophysiology students. You all should know that IL-1 equals fever. And so it decreases that. NF-kappa beta. NF-kappa beta is a pro-inflammatory mediator and has been shown to be decreased with some of the things I'm going to mention today, specifically curcumin. And tumor necrosis factor, another cardinal cytokine in the immune system, which causes inflammation. So how do you use curcumin? Certainly encapsulations, you can take those. It isn't absorbed well. It's been shown to be increased by the addition of black pepper. So perhaps black pepper, I know that people are using it in golden milk, so dairy milk or coconut milk, adding your turmeric, maybe a half a teaspoon, quarter teaspoon of turmeric, along with some honey and some black pepper could be a great afternoon alternative to green tea, perhaps, or to wash down your green tea, maybe. I love green tea, so not a problem. But encapsulating it or adding it to your foods, adding it to soups, adding it to curries, adding it to vegetables, it does have a little bit of a spicy flavor to it. And again, it may be foreign to your palate, but definitely worth it. Quercetin. So quercetin is about bioflavonoid. I've used it in my practice for a long time. I've used it personally for a long time for allergies. It stabilizes the mast cells in the membranes of mast cells, preventing histamine from being released so readily. And however, we are finding that it has antiviral activity because it also has antiviral activity, and it potentiates the action of zinc, which is important for the immune system as well. So onions, broccoli, apples, there are a number of fruits and vegetables found in quercetin. You can also supplement it, and so consider quercetin. Apigenin. Apigenin is another flavonoid found in celery, found in parsley. It's found in some of the herbs that I'm going to mention today. I believe, I want to say Chinese skullcap, but that may not be the right one. I have to look. No, it's salvia, Salvia officinalis, so sage. Has apigenin in it as well as chamomile. Chamomile high or not high, at least has apigenin in it, and there are some studies, interesting studies on chamomile oil in particular, but chamomile for decreasing inflammation. Decreases lipoxygenase. Lipoxygenase is an inflammatory mediator that triggers the release of leukotrienes. Leukotrienes are pro-inflammatory, and so anything we can do to decrease that lipoxygenase could be beneficial. I believe boswellia, which is frankincense, also has been shown to decrease 5-lipoxygenase. And I hadn't thought about that one but until just now, but may be useful. There are some other substances as well. It looks like I have my some things out of place here, but miracetin, I don't have the, down here, I don't have the citation in the right place, but miracetin, another flavonoid found in oranges, found in parsley. Carob is high in miracetin. I'm not crazy about carob, but for those of you that like carob, might be beneficial as well. Tomatoes, berries, nuts, red wine, and tea, all high in miracetin. And scutellarin, which is found, both of those are found in Chinese skullcap. which I will be talking about a little bit more. Miracetin is antiviral, inhibits reverse transcriptase. Reverse transcriptase is needed for the replication of the virus in the body. We learned a lot about reverse transcriptase when we studied HIV infection, and a lot of the HIV medications include a reverse transcriptase in there to prevent replication of the virus. So definitely those things should be considered. So, it's really important to include these in our diet. And it would be also important for those of you who are interested in research to look at specific isolates and what their effect might be on various conditions, and perhaps even the COVID infection. Here's my opportunity to brag just a little bit. This is my tangerine kiss me cake. It was inspired by the 1950 Pillsbury Bake Off winner, which was an orange kiss me cake. I didn't have an orange. I had a tangerine in the recent Rissman Bake Off that we had. And it was a virtual bake-off as a way to come together as a family and do something fun. And this was my creation, the tangerine kiss me cake. I at least touted it as being really healthy because it has tangerine. It has a whole tangerine in it. And so it's high in naringenin, a polyphenol flavonoid. Naringenin and hesperidin, a number of other flavonoids in it, which are anti-inflammatory, and some of which are antiviral as well. My version was a gluten-free version. I included that whole tangerine, and it has tangerine, obviously the tangerine peel, topped with tangerine peel, shaved tangerine peel on the top of that good coconut frosting. Has some toasted walnuts on there and toasted coconut. Man, it was good. It was good. Who knows if it won? We just had fun with it, but it's a winner in my book. Anyway, consider it. You can find my email if you need the recipe. All right, supplementation. So vitamin C would be important for all of us at this time. It's important for all of us regularly. It does so many things, which I won't get into, but right now I might recommend that no more than 500 at a time, because we can't really absorb that much vitamin C at one time. It might be wise to just keep it to 500, but using it maybe 3 to 4 times a day, and then increase it perhaps with an infection if you have an active infection or active symptoms. It has been shown to inhibit the NLRP3 inflammasome, which has been shown to be the active inflammatory agent in the lungs of COVID patients. And so it may decrease the development of that by decreasing that inflammasome. Vitamin D3 also inhibits the NLRP3 inflammasome. It decreases IL-1. Remember, think IL-1 and fever. The recommended, well, I should say, a generally consideration might be 2,000 to 5,000 IUs per day. However, it has been discussed that perhaps we should consider decreasing supplementation with vitamin D. No problem with being out in the sun, but decreasing our supplementation of vitamin D during an active infection. Licorice is another important herb that one could consider supplementing. It's high in glycerinic acid, in glycyrrhizin, and other virus. It's antiviral, long been known to be an antiviral because it decreases replication. It's good as a free radical quencher, so decreases oxidation. If you have active hypertension, it might be a consideration because it has an effect on aldosterone to hold onto water, therefore increasing your blood pressure would probably be wise to consider something else other than licorice if you have active high blood pressure. Okay, melatonin. I talked about melatonin a little bit ago. Melatonin is an amine. Amines, if you might remember, have a nitrogen in the molecule. That's how we know amines. It has been, it's an interesting consideration. There's a study, a couple of studies that are looking at melatonin for the new SARS virus, the new coronavirus. So it has a strong antioxidant effect, and it has potentially decreases the replication of the virus, decreasing the transcription of that virus. So may prolong patients' survival time, which would be optimal, so that other things can come into play. Giving a chance for patients' immune systems to recover and eventually eradicating this virus. These have been replicated, these studies have been replicated in other conditions and other ARDS studies, acute respiratory distress syndrome studies, and other lung tissue conditions. So a worthy consideration, and it increases our sleep, which also decreases inflammation. I want to put a plug in for a long time ago. I touted the effects when I was in med school, the benefits of cherries, benefits of cherries for sleep as well as for arthritis. And I remember my boss saying, "Steve, we're never going to prescribe cherries for arthritis." And guess what? We do. I was right. Maybe that's the only time, but I feel good about that. And now we're using it because tart cherries are high in melatonin, and high in melatonin and anthocyanidin, those dark red pigments that are antioxidant. Thus, drinking cherry juice at bedtime, the tart cherry juice. And I have to be a little bit specific here. I highly recommend the 100% cherry juice, not the cherry juice supplemented with apple juice. I don't find as good of effect. And you're going to have to experiment for yourself. Kind of depends on the night, but I really have seen benefits from this. Anywhere from a 6 ounce to an 8 ounce glass would be something that I would start with. Also will be helpful for your arthritis, which happens as a result of sitting around, if that's the case for you. Okay, magnolia bark. So this is one that I find really interesting. I found this interesting study on lung inflammation and lung cancer. But magnolia bark is rich in polyphenols and have been shown. This is a really interesting study. It alleviates pneumonia by decreasing the nitrous oxide, the free radical damage from nitrous oxide, decreases IL-6, which is a cytokine that triggers acute phase reactants in the liver, from tumor necrosis factor, NF-kappa beta, and others. So it was actually a lung study in 2011, and I think that we really need to look at this. What is the benefit? Might there be benefit? I'm not saying that it's been proven, but I'm saying that we have seen this in other studies. We need to look at magnolia bark. It's not a study on viral infection. However, it does decrease lung inflammation and decrease complications of pneumonia, which we are seeing with COVID. I will mention that another polyphenol, honocchiol, or I don't know how it's pronounced, but I think honochial is what I might say. Neuroprotective effects. There's a number of studies on the neuroprotective effects by inhibiting the NF-kappa beta, that inflammatory substance. But what's interesting is this is in neurologic tissue, but because we're starting to look at the neurologic effects of COVID, it might be beneficial. We might want to consider Magnolia for decreasing the side effects of neurodegenerative processes associated with the virus. Andrographis paniculata. So andrographis is an Ayurvedic herb that's been used for a long time. It contains something called neoandrographolide and andrographinin. Those are diterpenes that are anti-inflammatory. They work by downregulating a specific inflammatory pathway. They've been shown to decrease COX-2, so that's cyclooxygenase. We talked about lipoxygenase earlier, but also cyclooxygenase produces prostaglandins that produce inflammation, and so has been shown to decrease some of these various inflammatory pathways, as you can see here on the slide. Has been shown to also reduce symptoms and shorten duration in acute respiratory infections. And that was a 2019 study. And so it seems to me that it would be a wise choice to consider. Again, I don't know the effectiveness during an active infection, but I certainly would make this a consideration for those of you that are wanting to do further research and or further study on andrographis. Skullcap. I remember studying skullcap back when I was a naturopathic student. So bicolin and woganon were bioflavonoids that were familiar to me, and so I've long been a promoter of skullcap. But bicolin is a flavone glycoside or a bioflavonoid that maybe should be considered as well. It's known to alleviate pneumonia. Again, in this same study that I quoted earlier, the 2011 Anti-Inflammatory Activity of Traditional Chinese Medicine, Chinese Herbs, mentions bicolin for alleviating pneumonia by decreasing, again, nitrous oxide, IL-6, tumor necrosis factor, etc. So definitely a worthy consideration and easy enough to find. I don't know its effects, but this is all speculative. However, at a time when people are dying at high rates, or much higher rates than we would like them to be dying, I think we have to keep this on the table. Has an ability to decrease the NLRP3 inflammasome, which we've talked about already as well. There was a 2018 study of bicolin and NF-kappa beta and NLRP3. And again, that needs to be looked at. And there's another study in there as well. Interestingly enough, this bicolin has been shown to decrease anxiety. Anybody not have anxiety right now? Good for you. I hope not. But for most of us, the world is a little bit in transition, and we don't know what that feels like because we haven't experienced it at this level for the most part. Perhaps back in other tragic times, but this is uncertain for a lot of us, and anxiety is a natural component of something this great, a pandemic of this sort. So Scutellaria, relatively safe as well. And so might be worth considering this one for yourself or someone you are working with. Okay, mushroom extracts. So there's a lot of information about mushroom extracts. And It's more than I know. I'm going to defer to the experts on this one. One of my students, Tyler Barrett, he has a strong passion for the medicinal mushrooms, and he's provided me with a lot of information and helped to clarify some of this information. But mushroom extracts have been used in chronic immune formulas because they're immunomodulation effects. They're adaptogenic. So they decrease stress. They can actually help decrease the immune system as well. They also have some antiviral effects. I've listed a few of the mushrooms here that are in some of the formulas. But I have been cautioned by colleagues that perhaps because of potential immunostimulation, they should be decreased during times of an active infection. Again, stay tuned. There is a lot of information out there that we still don't know. Cordyceps has been used as a respiratory tonic and is more of an immunomodulator, and therefore it may actually decrease inflammation, as suggested by Tyler. But we can't substantiate that, and I think we need to proceed with caution and let some of the experts decide. But I think this information is worth putting out there. I certainly have my friends, family, and patients on mushroom preparations in advance of any acute infection for its immune boosting effects. Okay, an exciting one that I've just came across today. Red sage, Salvia miltariza. Red sage, also known as danshen in Chinese medicine, used as a cardiotonic, used for increasing blood and blood qi, so circulating the blood in Chinese medicine. Important cardiotonic, and it contains this flavone that I just learned about today, tanshinone. Tanshinone has been shown to decrease lung tissue injury. And they did a rat study. This is a 2019 rat study that I think we all need to be looking at, those of us who are interested. From the scientific perspective, we need to be looking at danshen. We need to be looking at this study and studies like this because danshen has been studied previously, as have all the sages, the salvias. But it has shown specifically to increase the partial pressure of oxygen and decrease the partial pressure. Okay, great. I want to make sure I have it on there. Decrease the partial pressure of CO2. So again, that is part of the damage. That's just simply a measure of the damage of the lung tissue, and it looks like it's decreasing the damage compared to the control groups. It also decreases the activation of that NLRP3 inflammasome, and thus decreases the IL-1 compared to the control group. So this is definitely something that needs to be considered for those of you that are out there that have any research capability, or you're working with patients. It would be something that I would definitely consider. What I also am really excited about was this particular study, this nugget that I found as well, which was that chia seed. I didn't even know this. I use chia seed all the time. I didn't know it was a salvia. It's a sage. And chia seed has tanshinone in it. Well, it has less tanshinone than danshen. However, this study shows that that it has more cryptotangenone, which is a precursor that in the liver gets converted to tangenone, and this and therefore the amount equivalent is much higher in chia. Wow, chia. Who would have thunk it? But if it were me, I would be increasing chia in my diet. I use chia, I grind it up, put it in your coffee grinder, you know, those little coffee grinders, and I use a separate one because I don't want that coffee flavor in my in everything else, but grind it up and add it to I add it to all of my baked goods. Well, maybe not something that I want that's soft, like a cookie. I don't add it to, but I would consider adding it to all of my muffins um, uh, or my scones, which I'm well known for my gluten-free scones. My maple oat gluten-free scones. Ask my colleagues; they know. Anyway, I added to. It's in the. I think it's in the the tangerine kiss me cake too, because it's a good binder. You can actually use it as an egg replacer, though I don't. But add it to smoothies, add it to your yogurt. I had it this morning on my yogurt and granola. And sometimes you can add it, you can make isquiat. It's, you can look at for a recipe, but it's, I believe, lime juice and honey and chia seed and water, and it makes a thick paste, and you can just use that as well. But chia, let's look. This is really exciting, and I haven't seen anybody else talking about this. So, substantiate it for me, or tell me I'm full of it, and I better keep my mouth quiet about it because it doesn't work. I don't know, but certainly these studies are compelling. Black elderberry. So we know black elderberry, Sambucus. We've been using that for a while. It's been on the shelves. You know, you can find it at your local grocery store, and we've been using it for a while. And we're using it mostly for colds and flus, decreasing the viral effects, shortening the duration, etc. It's been used against, studied on HIV, HSV, herpes simplex, Coxsackie viruses causing the colds. And rich in antioxidants as well. However, it has been suggested by my colleagues to decrease it, to use it prior to the infection, but to decrease during an active infection. I haven't talked to anybody to discuss a little bit of why that is. I'm certainly interested, but I think because I have great trust in them, I think it's a wise consideration. So black elderberry, now, before an infection. So this is a study on the essential oils, and I found this really interesting. This is a 2008 study that looked at antiviral effects on SARS-CoV, as I talked about earlier. It has a high nucleotide comparison to the current SARS-CoV, so it's thought that there is a strong correlation. But in this particular study, they found that Laurus nobilis, which is bay, you know, that bay leaf that's stuck up in your cupboard that you might throw in a soup once in a while, that actually the berry of that particular plant, the Laurus plant, contains essential oils that were tested here. They contained ocimene, cineol, pinene, carine. There are a number of terpenes. These are the aromatic compounds that we find in some plants that give that odor, that triggers our olfactory system, and you know, that's why we use those essential oils. Thuja orientalis, so this is not Thuja occidentalis, but it's a little bit of a different, this is the arborvitae plant, you know, those tall cylindrical pine trees. that we might have out in our yard. Arborvitae, Thuja orientalis, was used in the study, as well as Juniperus oxycedrus. Oxycedrus actually means spiky, I believe. And so it's the spiky juniper that has these berries on it that are high in essential oils. I don't know if that's the same juniper that's used to produce the gin berries, but I'm guessing that a lot of the same terpenes would be in these. And I think that's the most important extraction we can make, is not to glom onto these particular essential oils that they looked at, but to look at the terpenes in those oils and see which one of those terpenes has the antiviral effect. And again, how was this study done? I think that's what we have to look at as well. I'm not suggesting that we're ingesting these essential oils. However, my interest would be this: what if we use those on our masks? Masks have been an issue. Having to reuse masks is an issue. I don't know, but what about the idea of our nurses carrying a bottle of Bay essential oil, Laurus essential oil, and putting a drop on here or there if they're having to reuse their masks? Again, I think it's important that we don't get silly with this and get naive or careless because we think, oh, I've got an antiviral essential oil on my mask, therefore I don't need to reuse it and I can touch it, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what I'm saying. But we can't sit by and do nothing. There are people out there, there are medical personnel who are making their own masks, which is abhorrent, but that's what has to happen. And I applaud them for doing so. Might we also arm them with essential oils that could provide an aromatic antiviral effect for those viruses the coronaviruses that are airborne or that move in respiratory droplets that potentially could land on someone and be transmitted. These are questions we're looking at. How might we use these essential oils? Essential oils can cause reactivity, and I think we need to study that and know that. You need to know that if you're exposed to high concentrations, you could cause allergic reactions and potentially severe allergic reactions. However, we can deal with allergic reactions for the most part. We haven't been able to get a good handle on this virus, and I think we need to consider this. Thoughts? Okay, avoiding during infection. Again, I want to emphasize that my colleagues have said elderberry, echinacea, certainly because echinacea is immune stimulant. Larch arabinogalactans, another immune stimulant, vitamin D, medicinal mushrooms, and I'm sure that there are many others. Proceed with caution, especially during infection. You do not want to add to the cytokine storm and further activating the immune system and activating the inflammatory damage. That's not what we want to do, but we need to look at these things. We need to be informed. And because many of you don't have access to this, I feel like it's more responsible for me to put this information out, to put it in your hands and say, what can you do with this? That's my intention. So I hope that you're hearing that. I want to say to seek the natural world. There may be answers there. If not, it'll at least bring you peace. I know during this time, there's nothing better than being out in nature. And I think we have to be a little bit cautious because we don't want to be out spreading virus or contracting virus. However, getting in the garden has been one of the best things for me. As we approach Easter this week, I want to leave you with a thought. The greatest of our teachers, Jesus, Buddha, and nature, perhaps one of the greatest of the teachers, have all taught us that we have to die before we rise. Do not try to rise, rather be risen by the effects of the power of nature, the power of having transformed via letting things fall, letting things, letting during this time, changing things up, changing our way of thinking about medicine, changing our way of thinking about our bodies, changing the way we're thinking about and approaching our lives. There's a real opportunity here. There's a real opportunity. Take a look at some of the things that I've suggested here today, and I hope that you find benefit. And if not, at least you'll find some peace by digging out in your garden. I promise you that. Thanks. You can contact me if you need to, srissman at msudenver.edu. I can be found on Instagram as well. And I can also be found, I think I have a Twitter account, I just don't use it very often. Perhaps this will stimulate some of that. One final thing, and that is feel free to disseminate this to others. I'm going to make this available to everyone. I hope that somebody finds it. Please, please be kind. This comes out of the intention of my heart, and I hope that you find it useful. Thanks.